We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Monday. It's going to be an interesting week, but keep in mind, I record in the early morning hours. And so nothing has happened this week, but that's not to say things aren't going to happen. I have a feeling about something, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Just want to warn you ahead of time, I'm a little jacked up right now, getting some crazy fucks on Facebook. We'll talk about those Trumplafucks and those trolls coming in constantly. But I got a job today. Other than this podcast and other than doing TikToks, I got a big job today. My wife and I are going over to my son's home, and we're going to hang out the whole day with our granddaughter. I got to tell you, I love it more than anything else, but it is so fucking tiring. We've had to come up with different things, craft stuff to do. We're going to make pizza for her dad later. We got all kinds of shit planned. But I got to get there at 7:45 in the morning. So I'm starting this podcast a little bit earlier because I usually go to bed at 2. And if I got to be an hour away from here at 7:45, that means I got to get up at 5. And 3 hours of sleep just isn't enough for me. I tell you what I will do though, when my granddaughter takes her nap at say 2 o'clock, I'm going to be right in there with her. But it's going to be a fun time. It's different than my normal day in the sense that I'm really going to be intense about keeping an eye on the granddaughter, keeping her busy and dealing with whatever we have to deal with. Fortunately, grandma's going to be there. She's an experienced mom. She taught fourth grade for 30 years. I can always count on her to know what the fuck to do. I'm just the guy that goofs around and lets the granddaughter do what she wants. So my granddaughter and I will have to kind of go behind grandma's backs to get some things done, but it should be fun nonetheless. Now, as I've said many times before, it seems like every week there's something crazy that goes on, some new revelation, a new indictment, new scandal, whatever it is. It's every week, and it's been that way for some time. And thank God for that. If not for those crazy events that go on every week, I wouldn't have fuck all to talk about. So I appreciate it. It's entertaining to me, but it's helpful to me to be able to come here on the podcast or on TikTok or wherever else and deliver something that's kind of interesting. You know, one of the things I've been watching on TikTok, I've been seeing a lot of things on my For You page, and I'm realizing very quickly that they're old stuff because they're referring to old situations. And I'm thinking to myself, did that just happen again or what? So I've had to take some things with TikTok with a grain of salt. But here's the deal. Whenever I come on TikTok or podcast, sometimes I'll make predictions or talk about what I think is going to happen. Now, I have to own up to the fact that I thought there might be a possibility that the indictments coming out of the DOJ with J6 might have come out Friday or maybe today. And that still may be right. But here's what I do know about the circumstances. We know that Fani Willis is definitely coming out with indictments like in the first or second week of August. We also know that Jack Smith wants to come out with his indictments prior to Fani Willis. So let's say Fani Willis is coming out with her indictments in the first week of August. Well, we're in the last week of July, so that leaves only this week for Jack Smith. I don't know if that's how it's going to shake out, but logic would tell you that's how it's going to work. So we will see. But I will tell you this, no matter how you look at it or when the indictments come, the next 2 months are going to be entertaining as fuck. There's going to be something every other day that's going to drive Trumplafucks and Donald Trump crazy. And you can tell that Donald Trump is losing it a bit. We'll talk about some of his postings on Truth Social later on. And man, this guy is not well. He's just not fucking well. So I'm guessing, based on logic and some analysis, that we're going to see something out of Jack Smith in terms of indictments this week. It almost has to be Now, like I said, I thought it might be Friday, but then he changed it up on us. Then he interviewed a bunch of people after the target letter was sent. You know, this aide of Donald Trump's, Russell, and a few other folks. So he wasn't done interrogating people or cross-examining people, whatever you want to call it. These people testified. But I have a feeling those indictments with Jack Smith are coming this week. Now, what I want you to understand too is there's going to be a lot that goes down with these January 6 indictments. What we see when it first comes out will probably not be all of it. You'll see Donald Trump, maybe Rudy Giuliani, maybe Mark Meadows, and maybe that's it. And then we'll get all upset. Well, where are the members of Congress? Where's Ginny Thomas? Don't worry about that. That's going to come. That will come. And it may be, as Ed and I talked about, a superseding indictment. We know in the classified documents case that he put out, Jack Smith put out the two indictments for Donald Trump and Walt Nauta. And then he came back and said, oh, yeah, but there's going to be 30 to 45 more charges and more people involved. So we haven't seen the full extent of what we're going to see in terms of the classified documents thing. And you can probably expect much the same. In fact, it's probably more likely in the J6 investigation because there's just so many people involved. This was a wide-ranging thing. This encompassed a lot of people. And given that, it's going to take some time to sort it out. And it's going to take some time to get everybody indicted and charged. It's going to be an absolute shit show. And then first week, second week of August, Fani Willis comes out. And the crazy thing about Fani Willis is she's talking about RICO charges, pretty widespread RICO charges. And they're suggesting 12 to 15 defendants there. So the next couple of months are going to be crazy, not only for Donald Trump, not only for his little Trump-la-fuck buddies, but for the entire Republican Party, for people who haven't been touched as yet, but will now be exposed for their part in the January 6th insurrection. I wanted to bring something else up before we get to the emails too. Once again, on Facebook, I'm starting to get more and more Trump-la-fuck trolls coming on. Oh, and they're upset. They don't like me for some reason. And I explained on TikTok, that's well and good, because when I do things on TikTok or here on the podcast, I do it for two reasons. I do it hopefully to inform people about things they weren't aware of or expand on topics so they understand it better. And the second thing is to piss off idiots. So I've been pretty successful with what I'm doing on TikTok, and these trolls coming to Facebook are proof of it. I'm pissing off the Trump-la-fucks, and that's fine. I mean, whenever I see people on TikTok and they get people calling them names or threatening or doing all this stuff or saying crazy shit, they take it so personally and they get so upset about it. I don't understand it. It's not an emotional thing for me. I find it rather funny, and it's maybe fodder for me to go off on a different topic like I'm talking about here. But they'll make threats, and the funny thing is, the threats they're making are the same threats. Oh, we're going to have a civil war. We got a lot of guns. We got all kinds of ammo, and in a way, I'm kind of embarrassed for them because they just don't grasp what's really going on here. The fact of the matter is the Democrats and all of us are going to dismantle the Republican Party, and the Republican Party is helping us to do that. We're not going to get rid of the Republican Party by fighting or guns or anything like that. It's going to be perfectly legal. The courts where these investigations will ultimately go with Donald Trump and the people in the Republican Party. That's going to have a devastating effect on the Republicans. I'm telling you, the next 2 months, if we get as many indictments as we're thinking, it's going to devastate the Republican Party. All these people that spend all this time supporting Donald Trump, They aren't even going to be thinking about that. They're going to be thinking about saving their asses. It's going to cause them to scatter. It's going to cause them to be confused, and it's going to cause them to be scared. And that's the time when the Democrats need to take full advantage, and especially in the 2024 elections. So these guys come and make all these threats, and, I don't give a fuck. That's not going to happen. I mean, they made veiled threats when the indictment in the Manhattan district came down, but guess what? Nothing. And then they did the same thing with the indictment in Miami. Nobody showed, nobody of any importance, and not to any great numbers. And then even when they had a verdict in the E. Jean Carroll case, the lawsuit, they were talking about, oh yeah, we're coming out. They never do. And there's one main reason why they're not coming out. The reason is, when they did on January 6th, they had Donald Trump as a protector. He kind of controlled the National Guard in spite of what they say about Nancy Pelosi. Well, Donald Trump's not there anymore. They have no protection. It's Joe Biden. If they try to pull anything like they pulled on January 6th, it's going to get extremely ugly. We have the National Guard and police now allowed to deal with them as they are, domestic terrorists. And if they're trying to hurt this country, overthrow the government, or just attack some government location, there is going to be lethal force applied to stopping them. Now, they are stupid, but they're not stupid enough not to know that. That's why they didn't show up in Manhattan. That's why they didn't show up in Miami, and they won't show up anywhere else. All they have left is bluster. They're bullies, so they will make threats. And when those threats don't work, they'll make bigger threats, and they'll make bigger threats. But you know what? They will never follow up on them, because a bully has to have one thing when they go in to attack somebody or some group. They have to know in their head that they're going to win. There's no risk in what they're doing. That's the only way they do it, because they are cowards. Well, now that risk is there. They don't know how this is going to play out. So I guarantee you, they aren't going to do shit. So you Trump-fucks can say whatever you want. I'm not buying it. It's like the boy who cried wolf. You don't know fuck all. You haven't come through up to now, so you don't mean shit to us. It's just going to be a matter of time. You people will fold up and slither back under your rocks, never to be heard from again. So talk the talk, but I know you're not going to walk the walk. All right. We have some emails. This email comes from John, very short one. He said, if Trump is found guilty of a felony, can he still run for president from jail? I think the actual answer of that is true. He can. He can run for president in jail. Now, there is an exception, though. And it's kind of silly that there's only this one exception. It should be, if you're in jail, you can't run for president. I mean, if you're in jail, you shouldn't be able to run for president, because you're in jail, you're a felon. You can't vote for president, but you can run for president. That seems a little fucking ridiculous in my book. But here's the thing. It depends on what he's convicted of. If he's convicted of a crime that also ties in with the 14th Amendment, then part of his penalty would be he could never run for any office again. And I have a feeling that Jack Smith has this in mind when he's going to do the charging. I mean, he understands he wants to convict Donald Trump, but he also wants to protect the country. So I'm guessing at least some of these charges will be incorporated with the 14th Amendment, and he won't be able to run. And that's what's going to be interesting. As I was talking about yesterday, the longer Donald Trump holds on to his position of power in the primary race, the worse it is for the Republicans, because they're going to have to come up with a nominee. And if Donald Trump is the one by far that is the nominee, they have to pick him. But then after the fact, if he goes south or he becomes not viable to run for president, now they're going to have to scramble to come up with another candidate. And all they do is have a bunch of candidates that can't get more than 3 or 4%. Yeah, I know you're going to talk about Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is done. His campaign is failing so badly. Money's being yanked out of there. Ron DeSantis won't be a factor next year at this time. It just won't. All right, I've got another email here. This one's coming from Paul. What's Paul got to say? Good morning. Listening to your quandary on running a video podcast. The local CBC radio news station has been running a video simulcast for years. It is live and they have nailed it down pretty well. It is a nice change from the prim and coiffed talking heads on televised news shows. What, you don't think I'm prim and coiffed? Fuck you. This is the best I can do, for Christ's sake. I've got so little to work with. You got to give me credit to get it put together this well. Anyway, he says, I listened to several podcasts, NPR, BBC, CBC, etc., while going around my business. I long tired of the televised CNN, Fox, MSNBC formats. These days, I prefer the audio, but having the video option is nice touch. Listening to your podcast derived from watching your TikTok content, so you have something going there. One request, Mike. There's always a demand. One request, Mike. If you do go video podcast, please, 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 no Rational Boomer Speedo edition. Now I got to come up with a whole new idea. No, there was no question you're going to see me in anything different than what you see me here. Two things I try to do: dress comfortably while at the same covering up as much as I possibly can. I mean, I have a responsibility to the rest of the United States. I'm 63 years old. I love seeing these old people my age dressing in the muscle shirts and having long hair and do all this stuff. God bless them for doing it. I can't do that stuff. And at the same time, I don't want to dress like some of the people I know that are my age. And I knew them when they were young, but now they dress like old men. There's got to be a happy medium. You can't dress like a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old, but don't dress like a 100-year-old. So I just chose, I would always wear jeans and button-down shirts and stuff like that. But since I retired and I'm doing this, I told my wife, no more. I'm wearing nothing but comfortable clothes. Like a polo shirt or a t-shirt, whether it be winter or summer. I wear the long sleeves in the winter. I don't wear jeans anymore because they're not fucking comfortable. And I'm an old man and I don't have to be dressed up. So I wear these stretchy joggers, that everybody wears. I don't know if they're in style or if it's even proper for me to wear them, but they're fucking comfortable. And that's all I care about. So I don't worry too much about fashion, as you can tell. I certainly don't wear Speedos. I don't, I don't even really go swimming that much other than for exercise. So I appreciate the comment. Note taken. And I'll do the best I can not to come up with a Speedo edition. Trust me, not going to fucking happen. All right, I have another email from Gigi. Now, she's written before. Dear Mike, I hope you're well. Thank you as always for being the voice of reason. I think it's very important that you use your platform to start discussions about Project 2025, the new platform put out by the Heritage Foundation on their plans to change our government once Republicans regain power. I started reading the platform and it sent chills up and down my spine. Oh my God, this war is not about Trump anymore. It never really was. He was just their patsy. I agree with you there. This has given them time to truly organize and get it right the next time. There can be no next time or we are truly sunk. The importance of squashing these crazies is all we should be focusing on. Please talk about this. I haven't read anything about the 2025 project, but I've heard bits and pieces of it. It doesn't surprise me, but it's fairly presumptuous, don't you think? I mean, when we get control back, half you motherfuckers are going to jail. Your party is going to be destroyed. Maybe better idea is to try to keep your party together or rehabilitate it some way and not worry about getting back in power. Frankly, the whole attitude of them getting back in power is going to be troublesome for them. 2024, we are going to have the Republicans pretty much buried in bad publicity and indictments and charges and convictions and that sort of thing. It's actually going to decimate the Republican Party. So as far as I'm concerned, they don't have any chance in 2024. It will be a blue wave. They'll try their heart out, but it won't work. And if those things aren't what's going to shut it down for the Republicans, then it's going to be the fact that we have all these young people starting to come in, Gen Z and millennials. We're going to have a lot of them in 2024. And then in 2028, they are going to be the majority voting bloc. So I really question whether the Republican Party can get back in power in the near future. They're going to lose in 2024. At that point, they're going to realize, everything we fucking did was wrong. Maybe we should change it up. Should have done that 2 years ago, but they weren't sharp enough to do it. They've held on to Donald Trump and this fucking ideology way too long. So here's what I imagine happening. 2024, the Democrats take control. They can start implementing some of this stuff for the middle class, doing good things for the country and doing good things for the people of this country. So they go another 4 years, presumably with Joe Biden. Okay. Joe Biden does well in the next 4 years. The Republicans can't recover. They can't rehabilitate in 4 years. They're still going to be down. And then if the Democrats did a lot of good things in those 4 years, if they maximize the productivity in the 4 years, there's no way the Republicans can win, in addition to having all these young people voting. The Republicans may be done for the next 10, 12 years until they can come up with some other image other than what they have. These young people aren't going to forget overturning Roe v. Wade, weak gun laws, overturning affirmative action. They're not going to forget about that. They didn't forget about it prior to 2022, 2024. They're not going to forget about it. We can only hope that in 2024, the Democrats can fix all the things that the Republicans fucked up. And then that works to the Democrats' benefit come 2028. I get what you're saying. Gigi, and you're right. We need to look into it and we need to push. It kind of goes back to what I said before. We have the Republicans on the run. They are losing at every turn. They are embarrassed. This is the time when the Democrats finally have to show a killer instinct. When we have the chance, we need to put them down and put them down permanently. Now, they may come back in a different form later on, but it's going to take a long time to build that up. The longer we can keep them out of the mix, the better it is for this country. So I agree. Let's not take any chances. Let's go after them at every angle. And that's kind of my job here, is to keep you informed of what's going on, give you the true facts, and then you can talk to other people who will then talk to other people who talk to other people. And that's how we control the narrative. So I'll read up on it and see what it is. I can only imagine what they're talking about. I mean, what they're doing now is draconian, is fucking fascist. So, I mean, how much worse can you get for that? Other than, as you mentioned, they're now being organized. And that's the one thing that's been their downfall. Ever since Donald Trump got into office, the only thing they organized was trying to overthrow the government. Everything else, they don't accomplish anything and they don't organize anything. Now, Gigi went on to say, I did get your new P.O. box and will be sending you out a care package as soon as the weather cools. Humidity sucks when it comes to baked goods. Stay well and keep talking. True Blue, Gigi. Yeah, she brings up that P.O. box. I did that. A lot of people were asking me about putting up a P.O. box because people wanted to send stuff. Well, I've checked it a couple times. I'm not there every day, and I've gotten zero in that mailbox, which is fine. I'm not asking for anything. I don't want anything. I'm just trying to accommodate those people who ask me about it. So Gigi's going to send me out a care package. I'm sure it's going to be awesome, but there's still a little concern when somebody sends you food through the mail that you don't really know. I mean, I know you, Gigi. I trust you. But still, now that I've said this on the podcast, some Trumplefuck can come in and said, yeah, I got an idea. Let's send them some pot cookies and put our name as Gigi on it. And I say pot cookies because I really don't imbibe in marijuana, CDBs or CBDs. It's just not something I like. I don't have anything really against it. I quit drinking 32 years ago. I'm figuring, I don't want to jump on that train again. Anyway, thank you, Gigi. I'll be looking for your package. I will start checking more frequently. All right. I got a couple that came from the website that has, actually, I got one more from the podcast website where people have left. Now I got two. Okay. The next one from Sandy. This came from the Rational Boomer website where it's posted, where it's disseminated. This didn't come through email, but clearly they listened to the podcast, so they'll be able to hear this. So Sandy, here we go. Hi, Mike. Still loving your podcast, and it's the first one I listen to daily. I love your granddaughter updates and feel the same pride when it comes to our grandson. Incredible love for him. Yesterday, Justin Trudeau visited Bellevue, Ontario, and a mob surrounded him and called him a traitor and to go back to China. These convoy supports are as vile as your Trump supporters. It's so disgusting to see people behave like this. We now learn busloads of Americans came in support. Well, of course they did. I cannot wait for Trump to be indicted and found guilty with hopes he will finally no longer get in front of the camera and people start calming down. Keep up the great work. Love all the guests this past week. Thanks for what you do, Sandy. Yeah, we don't hear as much about what's going on in Canada. And, I'm sure it's not as bad as what we have here in the United States, but it's bad enough. I love the country of Canada. I've been there a few times and the people are perfectly lovely. The scenery is amazing. It's not any warmer than what I'm sitting here in Minnesota in during the winter months. I prefer to go to warmer places, but I'm looking forward to going back to Canada. My wife and I were talking about going to Montreal, mainly because it's almost like a European country with the French language and all that stuff. Now I don't speak French, so I'm expecting everybody's going to be talking shit about me because I don't understand French. All right, this came off the website too, and this is Ken. He says, love your post on many platforms and thank you for your service. Posted this on my Facebook feed. I would like to address the elephant in the room. How can truth and reality be so distorted? I get it. People hear what they want to hear and actively look for news feeds that justify their positions. Well, that's part of it. But wasn't law put in place to address this? Firm believer in blind justice, but also not ignorant to the fact that justice can be influenced or brought or bought on either side by money or power, but also under the impression laws are applicable to all. Ignorance of law is not an excuse. That's true. Is it me or is the law and order folks forgetting this? What is law? I'm an American who has lived most of my life overseas and in Asia. Ken. Well, you're absolutely right. And that is something that I think we all wonder about. I mean, part of the problem we've seen is that our norms and our laws, when it comes to a former president or even members of Congress, doesn't have quite the teeth it once had. You know what I mean? we had these norms, not laws, norms with regards to the president of the United States. And the common thought was, well, nobody's going to step over those boundaries. They'll be concerned and afraid of possible ramifications if they step over those norms. Well, Donald Trump didn't care. He wasn't afraid. And guess what? Once he did, we found out there is no teeth. The Republicans talk about a two-tier legal system, and they're absolutely right, but not in the way they describe it. People in power, people with money, they get a better break when it comes to the laws than we, the normal people. There is a two-tier system, and that's part of the problem. We need to put some teeth back in our laws. We need to actually go with the idea where no one is above the law. They keep saying this, but it's clearly not true. I mean, at the very least, a sitting president is above the law because they can't be indicted because of some memo in the FBI. Yeah, I think we have to make some dramatic changes. I mean, up until now, we had these laws and blind justice and no one's above the law. That was something that was put in our heads and it was never tested, so we believed it. Now that Donald Trump has tested it and we found out it's all bullshit, you're absolutely right. We have to change it. What is law? Well, that's a good question. Laws should be absolute. You break a law, you get punished. But that's not how it goes with our judicial system. If you're rich and have a lot of money and fame and power and notoriety, if you go to court and you're found guilty, what do? You just appeal. If you lose again, you just appeal. If you lose again, you appeal. Or if you're Donald Trump and you decide you don't want to pay somebody and they decide to sue you, you just bury them in legal process and they run out of money and you break them and you win because you had more money. That's not law to me. That's preferential treatment to the rich and famous. And this thing has to be changed. It fucking has to be changed. There's no two ways about it. Maybe that's something we can do once Democrats get in charge. First and foremost, we need to get some reform in the Supreme Court. We need to add some more justices to dilute the bullshit we've got going on now. And then look at the rest of the legal system as well. All right, we're going to take a break here in a bit, but I want to talk about this story. To me, it's kind of important. President Joe Biden will establish a national monument honoring Emmett Till, the black teenager from Chicago who was abducted, tortured, and killed in 1955 after he was accused of whistling at a white woman in Mississippi. And this monument will also be in honor of his mother, Mamie Till Mobley. This was a tragic story. 1955, you got Jim Crow going on. Emmett Till and his mother go down to Mississippi to meet with some family members. Just a nice trip to visit relatives. One day he is falsely accused of whistling at a woman and maybe catcalling her. So then white Trump the fuck types, Trump wasn't around then, at least in power. Then they grab him up, they abduct him, they beat him, they torture him, and then they shoot him to death. Now, in all the years that have gone by since that happened, they've been picked up by the police. They may have even spent some time in jail, but they were never held accountable for this at all. You know, we're dealing with Mississippi and they let these guys off regardless of what kind of evidence they might have had. The other thing is the woman who made this false claim, she just died a short time ago. And just prior to her death, people were starting to call her out. She was in her 90s and they were saying she should go into jail. And frankly, she should have, regardless if she was 90 years old or however old she was. So now Joe Biden wants to have a national monument, have one in Illinois and one in Mississippi and another one someplace else. And I think it's a wonderful idea. But it's about time, don't you think? I mean, this happened in 1955, 68 years ago. Emmett Till, if he would have lived, would have been 82 this year, and he was 14 when this happened. Why is it just now that they're looking at a monument for Emmett Till? Why? What took so fucking long? And I'm not even just asking the Republicans, I'm asking the Democrats too. What took you so long? I mean, the death of Emmett Till wasn't in vain because he is part of the reason the civil rights movement was spurred on at that point. And we know what happened with the civil rights in the 60s. As young as Emmett Till was, he is a big part of our history, especially for people of color. Why is it only now that he's being recognized after he was tragically and killed, and his murderers were let off? Basically, his accuser was never ever held accountable. Now, you have to remember what happened was after he was killed, his mother had a funeral, of course. Now, this poor boy was beaten to a pulp. He did not look good, but his mother insisted that he have an open casket because she wanted the people to see what they had done to her child for no reason. Everything that was claimed about Emmett Till was untrue. His murderers got away with it. His accuser got away with it. And this is fucking appalling. Why, after 68 years, are we now finally doing something about it? This is what I'm talking about when I talk about Republicans and Democrats. Republicans are the dumpster fire right now. We know that. We know the Democrats are the only ones that can put that out. That's why I fight with the Democrats. But once we get the Republican dumpster fire out, there's a lot of things we need to address from the Democratic side of things. Why not codify Roe v. Wade when you had a chance? You talk about Build Back Better as a transitional bill that hadn't been done in 80 years. Well, that's well and good, and I appreciate you thinking about doing it, even though it didn't get passed. But think about that. It took 80 years for Democrats and or Republicans to decide to do something big for the middle class. Where were you, fucking Democrats? Where were you with Emmett Till and recognizing the importance he is to this country and to people of color? I get frustrated about this. This is why I'm not completely sold and I'm not a fanboy for Democrats. I appreciate what they're doing now, and I hope they stick to it. But it's important for us to note that if the Democrats get power, we need to stay on them. Even if we don't have to fight the Republicans anymore, we need to stay on them to make sure they do what they promised they would do. I mean, because it's going to be easy for them to say, well, you know, we got the win. We can relax. We're in no rush. And frankly, that's what happened with codifying Roe v. Wade. They got it to the doorstep, but they never took the time to codify it, which they could have done in any of the Democratic administrations, but they chose not to. They got lazy. They found more important things that might help people with money doing things for them. So people always say to me, what are you going to do when the Republicans are gone? What are you going to bitch about? Well, we still got a lot of work to do. There's a lot that has to be fixed in this country. And we still got to keep pushing, even if the Democrats have full control. All right, let's take a quick break and we will be right back. And as you video watchers know, that was only for the audio, folks. We're taking a break for the audio portion. They're not going to miss anything because the way I'll edit it. But for us, for those of you watching the video, I'm not going to take a break because I have nothing to put there. And more importantly, I don't know how to edit video. So fuck that. I'm just going to play this little game. You'll be in on the game. And now we'll start part 2 of the Rational Boomer podcast. All right, Mike Pence, that weaselly motherfucker, that pussy ass bitch, he's still backing away from trading insults with his former buddy after a registered independent voter doubted whether the former vice president would ever stand up to Donald Trump. Well, he's never going to stand up for Donald Trump, and that will be his fatal flaw. If he doesn't stand up to Donald Trump, he's going to come off just as he is. Like I said, a pussy ass bitch. I don't even know why Pence just doesn't save himself the embarrassment. He has absolutely no chance of winning the primary, becoming the nominee, and certainly winning a general election. His own party is split on him. MAGA fucks don't like him. They see him as a traitor. They wanted to hang him. And the others that are supposedly the most reasonable minds, they don't want anything close to Donald Trump in the future. And Mike Pence is about as close as you can get. Now, Pence, he's set to challenge the former president as the GOP presidential primaries next year. He's not even close. One thing I will tell you, though, we weren't sure, but he is now qualified to be in the debates, which I think is going to be entertaining because he's so stiff and so weak. He's not going to do well up against a Chris Christie or somebody with a personality. He was at a was a meet and greet in New Hampshire. And he offered what he referred to an honest comment on Pence's White House prospects. This voter said, "I would love to see you be president of the United States." Well, you're the one. "I'm just going to give you an honest comment. I don't believe you will ever be until the day you stand up to that man," Tom Laughlin told Pence. Now, how do you think Pence would respond to that? I mean, here's a guy that wants to vote for you. That's a fucking unicorn. You're not going to see too many people that would admit that they want to vote for you. But he makes a good point. When are you going to stand up to Donald Trump? Pence once said Trump should never be president due to his coup attempt on January 6, 2021. And he fired back at the voters' remark. "Some people think we did a fair amount of standing up 2.5 years ago. I joined the ticket because there was a tacit commitment that we would govern as conservatives, and we did." No, the fact of the matter is you didn't govern at all. You said you had a health plan. Didn't happen. You said you were going to institute infrastructure week. You never did it. Biden did both those things, but you didn't. Governing isn't your strong suit. And that's not just you, Mike Pence. It's the Republican Party generally. They're more or less obstructionist and they don't get anything done. Pence goes on to say, "I'm not interested in trading insults with my old friend. I'm not. And some people think that's the way to win the presidency. I don't. But laying out the choice for the American people, we've been doing it. We'll keep doing it," Pence said. Yeah, and how's that going for you, Mike? You got like 3% in the primary. You'll have less in the general election. As I say, Mike Pence has no fucking chance at all of ever being elected to almost anything short of governor of Indiana or on the state legislature or something. I don't know what they think of him in Indiana, given their attitudes there, but I can't see him being a factor in any national election. Now, Pence's comments arrived roughly 1 month before the GOP's first primary debate. It's going to be in Milwaukee. And Donald Trump is saying, I'm not going to go. And he has good reason not to go because he probably won't do well, especially if there's questions from the media or the people that come there. He won't know what to expect, and he's not good when he's been pushed into the corner. So we'll see what happens. Several candidates have announced that they've met the Republican National Committee's 40,000 unique donor criteria for the debate, including ex-New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and gift card giving North Dakota Governor Doug Burnham. You remember his scam? You need 40,000 unique donors. So this is what he did. He's a wealthy billionaire from North Dakota. I don't know how you make that much money in North Dakota, but he did. He said, listen, if you send me $1, I'll send you a $20 Visa gift card. Well, who's not going to do that? Not all these people are going to be supporting Doug Burgum. They don't even know who the fuck he is. But trading $1 for 20, that's a good financial move. I mean, that's what's that? A case of beer? You send me $1, be one of the unique donors, and I'll send you a case of beer or the $20 to get it. I don't even know what a case of beer costs anymore. It's been a while since I bought one. I mean, I have for when we have get-togethers here at our place. But anyway, $20 if you send me $1. Who's not going to do that? Whether you believe in the fucking guy or even know who the guy is. I was tempted to send him $1 to get that $20 just to see if it actually worked. I didn't. Pence and his campaign have yet to reveal whether he's met the threshold. Now, I've heard he has, but I know it was close. I mean, Mike's not collecting a lot of money. People don't like him. And you would think that'd be one reason not to run in the primary for the Republican Party. But Mike Pence thinks it's his time, and it's not. Now we've got this other guy, Vivek Ramaswamy. He called on him to go after the former president. This man deserves better than that for the people of this country. He has talked about the future, and he has talked about how dangerous that man is for our country. There's very few people that have the courage to go after Donald Trump. And I can only think the reason why is that they believe, the only reason why they're running and why they're kind of soft pedaling Donald Trump is because they're assuming Donald Trump will end up dropping out of the race. And I think that's a good assumption. There's going to be too much pressure, too much shit hanging over his head. And they're assuming when that happens, they want to be the ones that pick up Donald Trump's votes, which they think will put them in a lead to be the Republican nominee. But here's the thing. That's not going to happen. These people don't vote for Donald Trump because of his policy, because of his ideas. They vote for him because he's in a cult and they love him. So if he drops off and Mike Pence or Ramaswamy come in and say, oh, I'm just like Donald Trump, vote for me, they won't vote for them. They won't vote for anybody other than Donald Trump. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't vote at all, just as a protest because their guy didn't get in. Therein lies another problem for the Republican Party. If Donald Trump doesn't end up the nominee, how many people just won't vote because they don't like anybody but Donald Trump? I think that's a serious concern and something that a lot of people aren't looking at, but we should. Now, during a discussion on MSNBC on the uptick of Trump post, yeah, he's losing his shit out there. You can tell he's scared. Political commentator Molly Jung Fast pointed out the former president is in dire need of cash to the growing avalanche of legal problems he's facing. Yeah, when you see him go on Truth Social or in his little speeches, and he's saying crazy shit, that's usually an indicator that he's scared. He has every right to be scared, with Jack Smith ready to pull the trigger, already having pulled the trigger once with the classified documents case, with Georgia on the verge of issuing indictments. Yeah, he has every right to be fucking scared. But he's also scared about something else. You see, the money isn't rolling in as much as it once was. It's not. He's not grifting as much money. And this motherfucker, over and above running a campaign and trying to live a crazy lifestyle, he's got some lawyers to pay. Now, these lawyers are smart. They know Donald Trump has a propensity of not paying his legal teams. So these people are basically saying, you pay me now or I'm fucking gone. Can you imagine if he doesn't have enough money to pay his legal team and they say we're fucking gone, having 2 indictments, 70 charges, another 2 indictments at least, and maybe another 70 charges, over 130, 140 felony charges, and you don't have the money to pay your legal team and they walk out? What happens then? I mean, even with the legal team, you have no chance of beating this shit. So I've said before, with over 100 felony charges, the odds are against him. You only need to convict him of one to put him away for the rest of his life, because he's 78 or will be 78 years old and he's not healthy. He won't handle it well in prison or any kind of lockdown they might put him in, even if they lock him down in Mar-a-Lago. But if he's locked down in Mar-a-Lago and all this other shit goes on and Letitia James sues him for $250 million, who's to say he doesn't have to sell Mar-a-Lago just to pay his bills and stay afloat? And if he does that, where is he going to stay? Hopefully, he has an apartment in Trump Tower in New York set aside so he has a place to lay his head. But I wouldn't put it past Donald Trump for not planning ahead. Now, speaking with MSNBC host Ayman Mohadeen Jong Fast, these people with these fucking names. They pointed out that the former president's social media outburst also ramp up when he is scared, and that his legal fees are skyrocketing. He just hired a new lawyer, and the lawyer doesn't sound too good because he showed up on a television show spewing whatever Donald Trump told him. That's never a good sign. He won't last long. In particular, she noted that lawyers representing him in Florida, where he's facing the federal charges about the documents, are pressing him for money. The people with the classified document, the lawyers are saying, dude, I need my money. Show me the money, motherfucker. And if he doesn't have the money, what's he going to do? He needs to raise a lot of money because these lawyers are very expensive. They're the bottom of the barrel, but they're expensive. She told MSNBC host, we've seen the reporting, especially those Florida lawyers with security clearance are really holding him up for money. Yeah, that's the interesting thing. You think about this. These guys are going to have to clear security. It's not just any lawyer can come in and represent them if they go by the wayside. They got to be able to clear security. So as lawyers go, they are mercenary, grifting motherfuckers in their own right. So they see they've got Donald Trump over the barrel, and they are going to drain him for as much as he's got. So if he has ready cash, you know where that's going to go. Now, here's the thing. Donald Trump has another problem. If he's collecting money for his campaign and he has to account for this stuff and have documentation as to what he's used it for, I don't think you can legally use money you've collected from your campaign to pay legal fees for indictments that you got prior to the election. I don't know. I may be wrong about that, but it seems logical that that may not be the best or most legal way to spend the money you've collected in your campaign. I mean, he's done the whole thing about, oh, I need help with the legal fund, which is ironic because he's a billionaire. Why do you need help? But he's done that, and he's went to the well too many fucking times. Now, she continued, she said, I would also say, remember, Trump's thing as he is trying to kick the can as much as possible with all of these cases, right? Meaning he's trying to push it down the road, delay it, and distract from it and all that stuff. And as you delay it, it may help you as far as staying out of jail a little bit longer, but it ends up costing you more money with your lawyers. So it's a catch 22 for them. She says this will be his second set of federal indictments, and they may not be in Florida, so he may not be able to kick the can the way he did with Judge Aileen. Now, she put it out toward May, and that's probably a little later than many of us would like, but it's really not that big a deal because there's so many other things that are going to happen. Manhattan's going to happen in March. The J6 investigation, when that comes out, that's probably going to come before the classified documents. She can delay it all she wants, but remember, as I said, we only need one charge, one conviction, and it doesn't have to be the classified documents. They will come ultimately, but probably after it's even important anymore, because Donald Trump will get hit with some other convictions and he'll be done. At that point, it'll just be kind of like piling on, you know? So anyway, she went on to say, but I do think he is ultimately quite scared. You are seeing him tweet out a lot of really violent and scary stuff. He's truthing it. He's not tweeting it. And he's trying to scare. He's trying to distract and get his point across. And that's exactly what he's doing. I mean, I saw an interview he did with some radical right media outlet, and they asked him, what's going to happen if you go to jail? And he said very specifically, oh, I don't think that's a good idea. That would be dangerous. And then he said something like, got 150 or 100, 150. And then he stopped and went on to a different topic because he's like the dog with the squirrel. But what he was going to say is 100 million, 150 million people who are backing him, which is absolutely ridiculous. But he went on to say, you know, these people are very passionate, more passionate than they were in 2020 or 2016. So what he's basically saying, what he's trying to put across is that you think January 6th was bad. Oh, these people are really mad now. And if you have the audacity of putting me in jail, all hell is going to break loose. Well, we talked about this before. All hell isn't going to break loose. And Donald Trump is either trying to bullshit his way through or try to incite people to do something, but they aren't buying it anymore. Last time he did that, 1,000 people got convicted, tons of people in jail. He promised he would pardon them, and he never did. How many times you got to do that to people before it doesn't work anymore? Yeah, I think we've got an issue with Donald Trump. He wants to try to scare us. He wants to try to scare the DOJ, hoping against hope that they will just curl up and say, oh, you're right. You're too powerful. You're too magnificent. We wouldn't dare put you in jail because of what might happen. Well, I think we all know nothing's going to happen, and it's going to be bad news for Donald Trump. Now, I've told you I don't watch CNN too much, but there are a few people on CNN I kind of like Jim Acosta. And Jim Acosta kind of got into it with Representative Tim Burchett. He is a Republican from Tennessee. This was yesterday as the host pressed on the seriousness of the former president's classified documents. They were talking about the documents. I'll get this. Wait till you hear what he fucking said. He says, Acosta says, this week Donald Trump made veiled threats about not putting him in jail, specifically saying it would be very dangerous if special counsel Jack Smith sent him to jail, as I was just talking about. As a point of fact, a jury will decide whether or not to send to jail, not Jack Smith. Now, Burchett claimed that he doesn't see the right wing rioting because I know the conservative movement is just really tired of burning the country down and seeing it burn down all over. You would think that, but they still keep making the threats. He claimed that the Trump threats are nothing more than New York bravado. I love how they've incorporated that new word, bravado, like they always used it. But every time he says it, his numbers go up. I don't even know that that's true. And frankly, the numbers can only go up a little bit because he only has so many people that still support him. Acosta goes on to say, yeah, but why aren't more Republicans calling him out and saying, don't do that? I mean, the last time he was whipping things up like this, he had an attack on the Capitol. Shouldn't he just knock it off? Now, Birch had confessed it would probably be best, but it isn't who Trump is. Let Trump be Trump. Let him act like a fucking child. What did that get you the last 6 years by allowing him to be him, allowing him to be a fucking dangerous child? That hasn't worked out very well. Do you Republicans not learn a fucking lesson? Congressman goes on to say if he was quiet about it all, he wouldn't be talking about it and his numbers wouldn't be going up. So, what he's saying is you need to incite this country into some kind of violence so his numbers go up. Shouldn't a former president or a sitting president want the best for the country, second being himself? Well, he's stating right here that Donald Trump doesn't think that way, and that should be enough not to vote for the motherfucker. He said, it's just him being him, and I hope to heck he wouldn't do it. So fucking say something about it. Why isn't a Mitch McConnell? Why isn't a Kevin McCarthy? They all should have some common sense. Why aren't they telling him? Because you're all afraid of the motherfucker, and for the life of me, I don't know why. Donald Trump has never been weaker in his life, and you're still afraid of him. Fuck you. Acosta then asked him about demands to defund the federal law enforcement. Burchett confirmed he's still a believer in pulling the funding at certain levels. He went on to say the Steele dossier was false and there is a $10 million payout robbery for the Bidens. He then explains those are technically not documented, but yet nobody seems to pay those any attention. No, they don't pay any attention to that because there's no evidence, there's no witnesses. They try to make this equivocation. Well, Donald Trump is getting hit all over the place with indictments, but Joe Biden isn't. Well, there's a big difference, a big reason for that. Donald Trump has tons and tons of evidence and witnesses going against him, and there are none of those things against Joe Biden. Just because you made up some fake fucking crime that Joe Biden made doesn't mean he should be attacked the same level as Donald Trump. In this country, we don't go after people who don't break laws, but we do go after people that do break laws. That's the difference. You can't equivocate that. Doing that is absolutely fucking stupid. Now, as I was saying, Donald Trump is kind of losing his shit at this point. He's going a little crazy, if you will. Donald Trump took to Truth Social last night to condemn special counsel Jack Smith and Attorney General Merrick Garland for prosecuting him amid his election bid against Joe Biden. Now, the former president has multiple federal charges related to his handling of classified documents and J6 and all this stuff. We know that Jack Smith is expected to indict Trump with regards to January 6th. And as I'm saying, I wouldn't at all be surprised if it happens this week. It almost has to, unless he goes into the first week of August and Fani Willis doesn't do it till mid-August. But you would think you'd want some cooling off period between the set of indictments. I mean, it'd be kind of cool for them to all come out at once and bury Donald Trump. I just don't think that's how they're going to do it. Now, Trump started his Sunday night rant on Truth Social by claiming his legal tribulations are a coordinated hoax. Of course they are, Donnie. Similar to the investigations during his presidency about his ties to Russia. He always says the Russia thing was a hoax, but in fact, what was proved in the Mueller report is that he had some ties with Russia. Since then, we've seen that he had ties with Russia. It's always the same with Donald Trump. Don't listen to the facts. Don't listen to the truth. Just listen to what I say. That's all that counts. And these dumb fucks do it. They don't care about facts or truth. They only care about what their Lord and Savior has to say. And that is the fatal flaw. He was talking about the Russia situation, and he says, in order to steal another election through prosecutorial misconduct. And that's pretty good for Donnie. That's several multisyllabic words, and I give him credit. Somebody must have wrote that out for him. He said, the prosecutorial misconduct at levels never seen before in the U.S. Deranged Jack Smith has already spent over $25 million. He spent closer to 8 or 9 million, not 25, but leave it to Donnie to do the exaggeration. I think I've told you this story before. I had a father who was narcissistic, sociopathic, and a pathological liar. And he did this exaggeration thing. I'm sure I've told you this, but I'm not above telling it again. I remember being a little kid, and my dad had a similar personality to Donald Trump. He was a little smarter than Donald Trump, which made him more dangerous. But just to give an example, a simple example of how narcissists will exaggerate to benefit whatever point they're trying to make. When I was, say I'm 12 years old, and I want to do something that might be on the edge of what a 12-year-old should do, I'd go to my dad and say, can I do this? And he'd look at me, knowing that I was 12 years old, at least I assume he did. And instead he'd say to me, Jesus Christ, you're 11 years old. You can't do that. You're not old enough. I say, Dad, I'm 12. And he'd go, whatever, you're young. You can't do it. But if I did something wrong, the next hour, he would say, Jesus Christ, you're 13 years old. Don't you know any better than that? I mean, that's what they do. They constantly exaggerate to make their point. And when they exaggerate, they're just flat out fucking lying. And Donald Trump is not above lying. Now, Trump goes on to say, just think of it. Between Mueller, deranged Jack Smith, and congressional committees, over $100 million have been spent investigating me since I came down the escalator in Trump Tower. Again, that's not even close to true. I think Mueller was like $3 or $4 million to investigate. But don't forget the investigation, what was his name? Durham? I think he spent $12 million investigating Hunter Biden. So fuck you. That's stupid. That's just fucking stupid. And the fact of the matter is, I'll be honest with you. If Jack Smith spent $200 million to get Donald Trump for crimes he actually committed, I think that's money well spent. I would pay my taxes so he could get paid the $200 million just to put Donald Trump away. Donald Trump is that dangerous that we need to spend whatever it takes to do away with him. Trump concluded by saying, Merrick, Garland, deranged Jack Smith, and coordinating Democratic prosecutors in New York and Atlanta have become the campaign managers for the most corrupt and incompetent president in the United States history, Joe Biden. Who would have thought this could happen in our once great country? Now, despite his mounting legal troubles, Trump still leads the GOP presidential field as nominee with over 50%. But this is what Donald Trump does. He always projects. He always tries to use the whataboutisms and say, this is happening to me. I'm the victim. And Joe is the worst. Well, again, I'll tell you this. There is no evidence. There are no witnesses. So you can talk all you want to talk. But I'm afraid it's bullshit. And I'm afraid you do what you do best. You fucking lie. Now, a CNN analyst, her name is Ashley Allison. She kind of pushed back when fellow analyst Scott Jennings attacked Vice President Kamala Harris and claimed the controversy over Florida's new Black history curriculum teaching the benefits of slavery to enslaved people is a made-up deal. Now, I'm sure you know who Scott Jennings is. He's this smirking, smug, preppy looking fucking Republican piece of shit. Every once in a while, he tries to even his temper and try to be more fair. But this guy is a dyed in the wool Republican. This guy is a guy who was a Trump supporter from the beginning when Donald Trump took office. He tried to apologize for him and tried to support Donald Trump. So I don't hold a lot of weight in who he is or what he does. But this is the thing about Florida. And now he's trying to say, well, that's not really what it is. Fact of the matter is, in Florida, they wanted to do away with teaching about slavery. They got enough pushback, and then finally they said, okay, we'll talk about slavery, but let's not make the white guys the bad guys. The way they explained it was, and and I've seen the documentation and I've heard the people speak on this. Basically, what they want to suggest is, yeah, but people of color got some good out of it. They got great training. Really. So when you went over to Africa and you dragged these people of color onto a boat, that was like just recruiting for like a college, for like a scholarship. You were just recruiting. And then when you brought them back to the United States, put them at hard labor and abused them and raped them and killed them and had them work without getting pay. Were they like interns or just on a scholarship program? Yeah, you don't get paid, but you got this free education. What was it like? Vocational education with a scholarship? Fuck you. And Scott Jennings saying they didn't mean it like that. That's a typical answer to the bullshit. Donald Trump says something stupid, and then they say, well, he didn't say that. And then when you play the video, they say, well, he didn't mean that. Well, when is Donald Trump or any of these Republicans going to say what they mean and not back off of it once they've been exposed for being fucking racist, misogynistic, anti-Semitic fucks? Now, the Florida Board of Education voted Wednesday to approve a curriculum of Black history that includes teaching that slaves developed skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit, and requires teaching acts of violence perpetrated against and by African Americans. Now, Vice President Kamala Harris torched the new curriculum in two speeches on consecutive days, and the Tampa Bay Times published numerous examples debunking the claims of the board's working group, which is headed by the chair of the National Black Republican Association. Now, look, I don't care how you look at it. I don't care how you try to spew it. White people went to Africa. They took people of color out of Africa against their will, put them on boats, hooked them to chains, brought them to America, forced them to work for no money, and then also abused them, raped them, killed them. They want to put a positive spin on that. Jesus Christ. I mean, this all goes back to their fears about white people no longer being in the majority. They are scared shitless about that. And I think it's hilarious. As I've told you, I go to Savannah all the time. Savannah is a majority of people of color. White people are the minority. Every time I go down there, I'm in the minority. And it's the most wonderful place I've ever been. The people are wonderful. And I'm not worried about being in the minority. Now, Scott Jennings said this. Well, it's amazing to me how little Kamala Harris apparently has to do that she can read something on Twitter one day and be on an airplane the next day to make something literally out of nothing. Wow. See, that's what they do. It didn't really happen that way. I can't believe she's not busy. What's more fucking important than our kids' education? They are the future of this country. Don't we want to teach them properly? Don't we want them to know the truth? Well, apparently Scott Jennings doesn't. And I hate that motherfucker. He tries hard to be normal and reasonable minded, but he's not. He goes on to say, this is a completely made up deal. No, it's not. I looked at the standards. I even looked at an analysis of the standards in every instance where the word slavery or slave was used. Why do you have to couch it at all? Just tell people what happened. Does it make white people look bad? Yeah. Well, white people were bad in that situation. We need people to understand what happened so we don't fucking repeat it. It's as simple as that. But these people are so butthurt that they might feel like people will look badly at them if they tell the true story. So they pull this bullshit. Now, Jennings also said, I even read the statement of the African-American scholars that wrote the standards, not Ron DeSantis, but the scholars. Everybody involved in this says this is a completely fabricated issue. And yet look how quickly Kamala Harris jumped on it. Well, I'm glad she fucking did. This is absolute cover up by Jennings. He's trying to say it never happened, and it did. Now, it went on, and Dana Bash was one of the reporters. I actually like her too. Bash said, let's let Ashley get into it. Ashley Allison. Well, I'm glad she said went down, and I'm glad she spoke on the issue. And just because Black people write it doesn't mean it's going to be accurate. Like, we can disagree as Black people as well. I think what the bigger picture is that this is happening in Florida. This is happening in Florida, where you have a governor who has an anti-woke bill and who has a don't say gay bill, who wants to ban the DEI problems, who wants to ban Rosa Parks. And now you have children reading Rosa Parks or other academic books that talk about diversity of issues. I think at this panel, we can all agree that slaves did not benefit from slavery, even if the citation says, well, they might have gotten something, but they didn't have a choice. So that's not a benefit. I mean, let's take that for example. Say a young girl gets abducted and gets raped and gets brutalized. But because she had a lot of time while she was in the hands of this abductor, and all she had to work with was a Rubik's Cube, and somehow she figured out how to do the Rubik's Cube really quick. If we go and get this girl out and take that guy to court, does he get off because she learned a great skill and knows how to use the Rubik's Cube? No, it's fucking ridiculous. It's a stupid comment. And that's one of the reasons I don't like watching CNN, because I see this kind of shit. They give people who shouldn't have a voice all the time they want to spew their bullshit. They may call them out on it, but I think at this point in time, we need to muffle as much of this rhetoric, this conspiracy theory bullshit as we can. We can see what it's done to this country up to this point. So we need to fucking stop this stuff. We need to make sure that it goes away. We've struggled so much in this country, and so many people have been damaged by it, that this shit needs to fucking stop. It absolutely needs to fucking stop. All right. We are coming to the end of the Rational Boomer podcast. We've got the audio. We've got the video. I hope you're fucking happy you get to see this mug while you're listening to the podcast. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. And of course, we will talk to you again tomorrow.